Okay, we're now on to section C, and we're going to be looking at question 4. All right, now, with question 4, this is the essay. And normally, learners see essay and they think, because it's out of 20 marks. It's actually the easiest 20 marks you're ever going to get, and here's why. It says, describe how the human body maintains, in other words, we are keeping homeostasis, of temperature, so that's thermoregulation. Remember, we have to keep the body temperature perfect. If it's too high, we have a problem. We're going to denature our proteins. If it's too low, well, things are going to stop working. So we need to keep the temperature at around 37 degrees Celsius. Then we also have to maintain the carbon dioxide levels, concentrations in the blood when they rise. So in other words, they've increased above the normal limits. So we want to bring them down. We want to bring the temperature down. We want to bring the carbon dioxide levels down. So this will be the first paragraph. This is your second paragraph. Now they carry on and they say, also, describe the importance of carbon dioxide in regulating atmospheric temperature, which means you're talking about greenhouse effect, and why increasing levels of carbon dioxide will lead to global warming. So this is going to be paragraph 3. And if you stick to that format, an essay is the easiest thing on the planet. So let's tackle the first one, which is thermoregulation, or how to maintain the temperature. So we say when. I'm going to put a 1 here, but don't number your essays, okay? But this is just so that you understand that it relates to the first part of the question. It's paragraph 1. When the body temperature, I'm just going to write temp, okay, rises above normal, okay, thermoregulators, what am I talking about? Thermoregulators, I'm thinking of thermoregulation. Thermoreceptors in the skin and muscles are stimulated. So what happens when a receptor is stimulated? They sends impulses, because the thermoreceptors will pick up the stimulus, convert it to an impulse, and then it sends the impulses to the, and this is important, hypothalamus. And what is the hypothalamus's job? It is, and I'm going to put in brackets here so that you remember, responsible for thermoregulation. So it's the hypothalamus's job. That's what it does. So the hypothalamus, and what happens then? So the impulses go to the hypothalamus. So what happens then? The hypothalamus sends impulses to the blood vessels, okay, and the sweat glands, in the skin. In the skin. Now, just think about this. When you are really hot, on a really hot day, what happens? You sweat. And if you've got a light skin, you can see that your skin goes quite pink. And sometimes it can go, your face can go very, very, very red. Okay, why? Because of all those blood vessels, and the sweat glands are stimulated, so they secrete sweat. Why? Because of the hypothalamus, which then it's in response. It sends impulses to the blood vessels and the sweat glands and the skin. Okay, Then we have vasodilation, or you can say dilation of the blood vessels. Vasodilation of the blood vessels takes place and more blood is supplied to the sweat glands. Because where does the sweat gland, how can the sweat glands make sweat? They need blood. So they get more blood, and we now get more blood to the sweat glands. So what happens now? The sweat glands produce more sweat, which evaporates and cools the skin and blood vessels down. Okay, and what does that do? It causes, so causing the body temperature to decrease and return to normal. I mean, really, how easy is that? And that would have been 7 marks. So thermoreceptors in the skin pick up the increase, stimulates the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus sends impulses to the blood vessels to vasodilate, in other words, to go bigger, closer to the skin, and the sweat glands get more sweat, so we can make more sweat, the sweat evaporates, and the body cools down. Zip, 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 7 marks. Thank you for coming. There we go. All right, let's do another color. So, for the second part, just to refresh, it says when we want to maintain the carbon dioxide levels when it rises above normal. So, what happens when the carbon dioxide levels are too high? This is going to be a problem. So this is paragraph 2. When the CO2 level rises above normal, okay, chemoreceptors in the carotid arteries, those are the arteries in your neck, the carotid arteries and the aortic arch, that loop of the aorta. So it's your carotid arteries. You can actually feel your blood, you can feel your heart rate here in your neck. You've seen in movies when people lie down, well, they're lying there and somebody gets in and they put the fingers here to check. You never ever use your pointy finger, by the way, to check any kind of heartbeat. You always use this finger here, second and at least your middle and your ring finger there. And if you feel here, you can actually feel the heartbeat. That's the carotid. You've got 2 carotid arteries and then the aortic arch as the aorta comes out of the heart. So the chemoreceptors in the carotid arteries and the aortic arch are stimulated and send impulses to the medulla oblongata. Why? Because the medulla oblongata regulates your breathing rate and your heartbeat rate. Again, use your common sense here. If you do exercise, and what happens? The more exercise you do, the faster you start to breathe. So why? Because you're making more energy, and one of the products of cellular respiration is carbon dioxide and water vapor. That's why you breathe, you exhale that out. So when you exercise, you're going to have an increase in carbon dioxide levels. And you know, even if you don't do life sciences, go and ask anyone. When you do exercise, your breathing rate goes up and your heartbeat rate goes up. Okay, so the impulses are sent to the medulla oblongata. So what happens then? The medulla, and you can't just call it the medulla. Medulla just means middle. You have to call it the medulla oblongata. The medulla oblongata sends impulses to the breathing muscles. Okay, now I hope you remember that your breathing muscles are the intercostal muscles, which are the muscles that are between your ribs, okay, and your diaphragm. And that is what's going to lift your rib cage up and pull your rib cage down, are the intercostal muscles and the diaphragm. So we call them, just for short, the breathing muscles, and that's fine. So the medulla sends impulses to the breathing muscles to actively increase. Let's just get some space here. To actively increase the rate and depth of breathing. Okay, so it's not just how quickly you breathe, it's how deeply you breathe. It's the rate and depth of breathing. All right, now the second thing is that the heart rate increases due to impulses from the medulla oblongata to pump oxygenated blood, which means blood that's full of oxygen. Why? Because you're exercising, you need the energy, and you can't make energy without oxygen. So you need oxygen and glucose to make the energy, all right, during cellular respiration, and the byproducts of that are carbon dioxide and water. So you to pump oxygenated blood to the tissue and cells. More quickly. Okay, we want to get it all there. We want to make sure that the cells have got the oxygen to work with. More. Now, because there's more blood flowing to the tissue and the cells, more carbon dioxide is collected by the blood. Okay, and what happens? It's transported to the lungs to be exhaled. And the CO2 level in the blood decreases back to normal. Yay, hooray. And now everything's fine. Okay, so that would have given you another 7 marks. I mean, wow, guys and girls, you can't tell me that. That's a walk in the park. Okay, so if we've got 7 and 7, that's 14. So we are looking at about 3 marks here. Maybe, yeah, this could have been, I don't know, this is 13 to 14 marks. So this is going to be 3 to 4 marks for this last paragraph, which is paragraph 3. Let's do that one in blue. And what are we going to do here? We're going to talk about CO2 to regulate atmospheric temperature, and why, if there's more, we are going to end up with global warming. So we've got 2 things to talk about there. The role of carbon dioxide, number 1, and number 2 is global warming. So we say CO2, this is paragraph 3, Don't write the numbers, it's an essay. So CO2 in regulating atmospheric pressure oh man, atmospheric pressure, that's not, I'm really not focusing. Atmospheric temperature, yeah, and its influence on global warming. Okay, is that CO2 is a greenhouse gas. Okay, and I'm going to put in brackets here just so that I'm going to put a little star here, and in brackets you've got oxygen, you've got nitrogen, and you've got, I can't think, methane. There are a whole lot of gases that are greenhouse gases, but carbon dioxide is a very important one. So carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas that traps heat and prevents it from escaping the atmosphere. Okay, atmosphere. Now you've got to understand that if we have no greenhouse effect, we will freeze on this planet. We need something to trap gases, in this case the greenhouse gases, to trap the warm air around the earth. If it doesn't, we freeze. So, from escaping the atmosphere. This is called, and people, you learnt about this in grade 7. This is called the greenhouse effect. Okay, which is responsible for keeping the earth warm. Okay, so that's important. So, and why is it important? So that it can sustain life. And I mean, you can put that, it can sustain life in any way that you want to. It's to keep the earth warm so that life, people, organisms can survive. Okay, if it's too cold, they're not going to survive. Okay, then an increase, so it's the same as homeostasis, an increase in CO2 levels in the atmosphere, which is normally caused by a lot of pollution, in the atmosphere enhances. So you've got to use this word, enhances. It actually means increases, but it enhances, it makes it bigger, better, magnifies it. Enhances the greenhouse effect. So if we've got too much of it, it's not a good thing. So therefore, more heat will be trapped in the atmosphere okay, causing an increase. And that's the problem. If there's too much, it's going to cause an increase in the average global temperature and therefore global warming will occur. Thank you for coming. And that is how easy it is. So this whole thing on greenhouse gases and carbon dioxide levels rising, that is why we have such an issue at the moment. So people, this you actually learned in grade 7, and then you did it again a bit in grade 9 or 10, I think, and then again in matric. So, I mean, like, honestly, you should know it by now. So that last part of the essay was a freebie for you, and there you go. So that's it for today. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of it. Stay safe. Take care. And I'll see you next week, same time, same place. Mwah.